Okay, so Jimmy Dore recently uploaded a video arguing that the time is ripe for a third party, and gave some reasons why. I'm going to unpack his reasoning in this video. The point isn't to argue against third parties. If you believe in the third party route, and you want to support one, by all means, do it. This video is simply intended to unpack some bad arguments I've been hearing on YouTube and elsewhere. Jimmy just happens to have organized them for me, nice and neatly in a recent video. Before we get started, please consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell icon, and becoming a Patreon supporter if you enjoy these videos. Are you ready?
Here we go!
Support for third-party political party is at a high point. That's what we need. 62% of adults say the parties do such a poor job representing American people that a third party is needed. An increase from 57% in September. That's from Gallup. 62%. The poll shows 50% of U.S. adults identifying as political independents. So half the country is now politically free of a party. So that means only 25% of the country considers themselves Democrat and only 25% considers themselves Republican or thereabouts. The biggest party is the independents. They're double the size of either party, corporate party. So that's who the People's Party are going to be going after. In several election years, 2006, 8, 12, Americans were divided as to whether a third party was needed. But since 2012, Americans have consistently favored the idea. Americans' appetite for a third party has never been greater in Gallup's nearly 2 decades of polling on the subject, and now a majority of Republicans are joining the usual majority of independents in wanting that option. The People's Party could really make a big dent. A populist person appealing to lefties, righties, and people in the middle who are disaffected from these two corporate parties could win. Certainly get in the debates and change everything.
First off, kudos to Jimmy's former producer for not cropping out the date to hide the fact that this article was already 9 months old when he recorded this video. Why is this relevant? Because by the time he recorded this video, that 50% dropped to 40%. Which is within the normal range of distribution over the last 17 years. That said, there is a gap between what people say in polls versus what they do in real life, and this is a gaping hole that people like Jimmy and, for that matter, Kyle Kulinski, overlook in their commentary. So, how do these self-styled independents vote? The vast majority of them prefer one of the two major parties and vote for them with nearly the same frequency as do self-ascribed Democrats and Republicans. And this makes sense. I would probably also describe myself as an independent on one of these polls. But there is no doubt that the Democratic Party is far closer to my ideals than the Republican Party. It's not even close. It's like asking me if I'd rather live next to someone who frequently plays their music too loud for me, or someone whose dog is going to constantly piss and shit on my lawn, and who will spray paint and then try and set my house on fire every other day. In a given election, I would possibly vote for a Green Party candidate at the top of the ticket if not in a swing state, but generally speaking, I am going to vote Democrat if the only other option is a Republican. Nevertheless, I find the concept of identifying myself as a Democrat rather cringy. I don't believe that either voting or policy preferences should be an identity, which is also why, for the longest time I didn't even identify as progressive or as a leftist, even though my policy positions square well with those of most leftists and progressives. So this is the problem with Jimmy's interpretation of this poll on independents. He's thinking of independents as a solid block, when in fact, the vast majority of them are fairly tied to one of the two major parties. In addition to that, those who aren't, are often so because they are on some extreme. A white nationalist may label themselves an independent because they find the Republican Party insufficiently xenophobic or insufficiently small government and pro-free, unfettered market. In fact, 57% of independents say the government is doing too much. Do you really think those people are going to want government also running our health insurance system? These people aren't going to support a single-payer healthcare platform. Jimmy's narrative that there exists this voting bloc called independents that a single party will cater to, is a fantasy. In fact, the reason the Democratic Party is as scattered and uncoordinated as it is, at least one of the reasons, is that it's a big tent party, a loose coalition of economic progressives, pro-choice advocates, feminists, environmentalists, LGBTQ rights advocates, etc. The GOP is more of a united front, and it includes many people who are simply afraid of progressive change and want to push back on changes to traditional cultural norms and an increased role in government. As I pointed out in a previous video, Jimmy's endless gaslighting and simping for the GOP makes sense once you realize he's trying to make room for the MPP. And the fact that pandering to a right-wing audience is far more lucrative probably plays a role here as well. By getting his facts wrong, and omitting other facts, he is finding ways to blame Democrats for GOP obstruction, or in some cases, simply lying in regards to what Democrats have tried to accomplish or in some cases, have accomplished, in order to make the parties seem more alike than they really are. This is an ends justify the means campaign to argue for the MPP. In reality, the GOP couldn't pay for a better public relations stooge. Jimmy has become a sort of Patrick Moore for the GOP.
I do not believe that glyphosate in Argentina is causing increases in cancer. You can drink a whole quart of it and it won't hurt you.
You want to drink some? We have some here.
I'd be happy to, actually, but not really. But
not really.
I know it wouldn't hurt me.
If you say so, I have some glyphosate.
No, I'm not stupid.
Okay, so you.
No, but I know
so it's dangerous.
No, people try to commit suicide with it and fail fairly regularly.
Tell the truth.
It's not dangerous to humans. No, it's not.
So you're ready to drink one glass of glyphosate?
No, I'm not an idiot. Interview me about golden rice. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, then it's finished. Then the interview is finished.
That's a good way to solve things.
Yeah. You're a complete jerk.
On top of all of this, the MPP is, unfortunately, more like a disorganized fraternity at this point than a viable third party. To this day, it doesn't look like they have ballot access in a single state. There are serious accounting irregularities. The MPP petitioners have yet to have their concerns adequately addressed. And there is a serious lack of transparency.
Who is there to hold CC members accountable?
Is this something, Todd or Phil, that you wanted to comment on?
I would just say we hold each other accountable. 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 When it comes to that.
Notice how tepid Jimmy's promotion was. We can also see how weak others are when trying to defend the MPP. Here is Lee Camp, defending the MPP, probably because his lady friend here is on their advisory council.
And speaking of building up the alternatives, I know I'm running out of time here, but I know you guys have had a lot of critiques of MPP, Movement for a People's Party. I just want to say that I don't keep track of all the he said, she said stuff, but I know a bunch of the people that have helped create it. I know Nick and I know some of the others, and I'll just say that they're the most fucking genuine, impressive, hardworking people that many of them are getting paid nothing.
Unfortunately, what we have looked into and, talked to a lot of the ex-petitioners and people that were involved, what we found is that there's not really a lot of accountability, transparency, or democracy within the organization. It's kind of just like from the top up, orders being given. And yeah, like you said, there are a lot of people doing a lot of good work. I
don't think that's true about transparency.
I mean, we've tried to, lots of people have tried to ask them tough questions and they've refused to answer.
Yeah, we've also invited Nick Brand on our show. He said he would come on our show publicly, and then we reached out to him and said, Nick, when do you want to come on our show? He hasn't responded.
And they really want to create.
You know who else was working his ass off? Jerry Perez. Jerry Perez was the West Coast coordinator.
Is not true. So
yeah, Jerry Perez was the West Coast coordinator of the People's Party, and he worked his ass off for months and then quit because he was so disappointed and disillusioned with what he saw in the way they were treating their activism. We had that guy on our show. Nick Brana refuses to come on our show. He refuses to take any tough questions from any independent media outlet, Frank Analysis included.
Nick's taking tons of tough questions.
No,
the fact that he won't come on your show is not a reason to.
Okay, which show did he go on? Which show did he go on to take tough questions?
Do you have any idea the number of people that haven't come on my shows? Does that mean I should despise them all?
Where did he go to take tough questions?
What's that?
Where did he go to take tough questions?
They've responded to all these things.
No, they haven't.
Yes,
they literally haven't. They accused them of being infiltrators.
Yes, they have, man.
They accused them of being infiltrators and didn't respond to any of the actual substance.
I'm sorry to tell you.
We'll get to some of that he said, she said later. And here is Justin Hinkle, also unable to defend the MPP.
Perfect. So you're part of the People's Party, right?
I'm actually a member of them, yeah.
Okay, you're a member of the People's Party. Have you guys had any preparation to primary the hundreds of Democrats that are against Medicare for All? They oppose it completely. Have you guys prepared any campaigns against those people?
I can't speak to that. I'm not a representative of the People's Party. I'm just a member. And though I know Nick Brana, I know a lot of people who are affiliated with them, I don't engage in like day-to-day or week-to-week, operations with them. So I'm really not familiar with everything they're doing. But I support their policies. I support their strategy. And I think they are truth tellers. Yeah.
Sure. So when it comes to strategy, do they have ballot access in any state so far?
Yes, I believe
Which
so.
state?
What's that?
Which
they
state?
have? No, they have registration access. You can register for parties in certain states now.
But do they have ballot access?
I don't think so. I think you need like a ton of signatures to get ballot access.
That is true. That is fair. That is fair. Absolutely. You do need a ton of signatures to run a party.
I did it for the clout. I do everything for the clout. You will never see me do something not for the clout.
And to boot, their big, open tent platform has invited people with incompatible goals. Here is an instance where a debate took place within the MPP as to whether or not white people should be allowed to use the N-word.
The People's Party has also kind of represented an effort to bring together kind of left-wing populists and right-wing populists who share common enemies, but don't necessarily share a whole lot of common ideology. And so I'm curious from your perspective, where was that effective, and where was it not effective?
So I believe that people should try and work together if they all have a common goal, right? And the issue with this right, left, and far extreme and all these things is, me as a Black person, if your goal as a white extremist is to get something done for your people, I'm not included in that. So I can't be working with you towards that effort because I'm not going to gain anything from that effort. You have to be willing, anyone with any kind of extreme response to people who are not like them, they have to be willing to kind of step back from that thing in order to work together so that all of us can get the same thing done. Because in the end, we all have the same goals. Everybody wants to live and have a roof and have food and be happy. And like, it's not rocket science, but you can't work together with people who literally don't believe that you should have the same things that they have. And it really came to play sometimes, the night before the big purge, which is what we call the night that, multiple people were kicked out of the People's Party Slack and all of their information and platforms, was the day before. There was a huge conversation between a group of Black people and a group of white people, and the group of white people were basically telling the Black people that they had a right to use the N-word. Obviously, we did not agree, and there was a huge contentious conversation that went back and forth on the Slack. And what bothered me was when this purge happened, all the Black people who were involved in that conversation, they all got booted out of the Slack. They all got memos telling them they were no longer welcome in the party. And, all but one of the white people was allowed to stay. And the one white person who thinks that something called an NPAS exists actually spoke at the next meeting that was hosted by MPP for the volunteers. So this is what happens when you try to play that game with the right and left, and you don't acknowledge that the class struggle and the race struggle are entwined in such a way that you cannot separate them. You cannot pretend that one doesn't exist. And so people who are watching understand. I've reviewed this exchange. Like this definitely happened. This is not her telling of this is not a controversial or slanted description of the events. There was in fact this debate over whether white people should be able to use the N-word. The people arguing it were allowed to stay. The people arguing against it were kicked out. This happened after what we could call the Puff Daddy incident. Can you quickly describe that for us as well, and then we got to run pretty soon.
I would even go out on a limb and say that this is in part due to the sort of audience Jimmy Dore has been pandering to since Donald Trump was elected. And here's the thing. Even though I think our best shot is to get enough Democrats into the legislature to brute force more ambitious legislation across, I'm not writing off the third party route completely. I just think it's an even longer shot, by a mile. I do believe that the MPP in its current form is a dead end at best, and at worst, a slam dunk for the GOP. Aside from their countless organizational and logistical problems, Jimmy Dore has become a major liability. He's not building a powerful coalition that can get things done, he's inciting an angry mob of lemmings that just want to burn down the system. And this plays right into the GOP's hands, as they are fine with this. They're the party whose real slogan is, government doesn't work, vote for us so we can destroy it, so that freedom juice can rain down from the heavens. Jimmy doesn't build bridges, he burns them. You hate black people? Who cares? Come join our big tent. You wouldn't delay and hold hostage COVID stimulus money that families in dire straits were waiting and depending on, over a vote on something that had no chance of passing? Go fuck yourself. More and more, Jimmy is attracting less and less of the well-intentioned people who just want everyone to have access to adequate health care, and more of the angry idiots who will yell at you for wearing a face mask in public, even though they themselves walk around in zombie skins.